You're listening to a podcast of spurious morality.
Hello and welcome to a podcast of spurious morality. I'm Johnston and with me today I have Gareth. Hello Gareth.
Hello.
And this is the return of 275. We've had a little bit of a break and we kind of left the end of the last series with no more 275 after we'd talked about it was Project Twilight was the last story we did, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So yes, we're back. And we've listened to more of the Big Finish Doctor Who monthly range. So we are going to cover 4 stories today. So we're going to do Eye of the Scorpion, we're going to do Colditz, we're going to do Primeval, and we are going to do The One Doctor. A little bit of a mixed bag, I think. I think we've reached the point where the range is confident enough to maybe do a bit more of a by numbers story at this point. Everything else felt big and bold, and even the by numbers stuff felt like it was doing something different before. But I think we've reached a stage of comfort here, maybe. So we're going to do these 4, and then in our next 275, we're going to do the entire second series of McGann's. So that's going to be a bit of a bumper episode, but let's not get ahead. So as ever, we'll introduce a story. Gareth will give us his written review of it, and we'll have a bit of a chat about it after that. So our first story is The Eye of the Scorpion. We're meeting a new companion. Go ahead, Gareth.
Okay. The 5th Doctor gets a brand new companion in this one, funnily enough, and Caroline Morris makes a good first impression as the ill-fated Egyptian pharaoh Erimem. She's headstrong and intelligent, whilst also being different from the usual companions because of her regal upbringing and casually violent society. All of this is promising when it comes to character dynamics. The casting is debatable, but at least it's not as noticeable as white British guys doing Native American accents in the land of the dead. As for the story, it's an enjoyable adventure concerning a plot to overthrow Erimem before she is crowned. The alien threat feels a bit grafted on. Did we really need a mind-controlling space parasite when there was already lots of unrest about the young pharaoh? That idea doesn't really show up until we're more than halfway through. It contributes to a feeling of the story spinning its wheels, with time to spare on a courtroom scene and a lengthy final battle that just gives us example after example of different minds under the parasite's control. It's good, but it's not very tight. It's a good showing for the cast, most of whom, like Jonathan Owen as Antronak, create the feel of a good period drama. But then you have Harry Myers as Yanis, a baddie played like an aneurysm in human form. His teeth are gnashing in every scene. It's an oddly discordant piece of direction in an already slightly jumbled story. There's plenty to like here, though, including a colourful turn from Nicola Bryant, whose rapport with Morris will come into play later. It just could have been stronger overall. I did like it, but yeah, that pace I felt kind of wobbled a little bit in the middle.
You see, this must be it is at least the 3rd time I've heard this story. Like everything we're talking about, 275, the entire monthly range, I have heard at least twice before. I think that this probably is only the 3rd time I've heard it, possibly the 4th, and it was a shock to me when an alien turned up. Like it's just so forgettable. Like if you, before listening to this a few weeks ago, if you'd have held a gun to my head and said, is The Eye of the Scorpion a pure historical, I'd have told you yes. Like absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. It's just it's not only forgettable, it's unnecessary. We've got, like, a few really good episodes of, like, court intrigue and that kind of thing. It's a bit flat, it's nothing exceptional, but it's, it's engrossing, it's gripping. And then all of a sudden, it kind of feels like in the last episode, it goes, "Ah, alien," and it didn't need it. And the Monthly Ranger's already confidently done pure historicals. The Marian Conspiracy and Fires of Vulcan stand out. So they exist, they can be done. Big Finish has no problem with doing them, but we just, I don't know, they just chucked an alien in for the sake of it. Um, I think you're absolutely right about it taking a little while for Perry and Erimem to become the sort of double act that we know and love, and they do work really well as a double act. They do have a fantastic
Yeah.
rapport. I'm not convinced it's present here so much.
It does seem like a sort of trigger finger thing with Doctor Who, where it's like, can we get away without an alien? And sometimes, yeah, I think they deserve the confidence to commit to not doing it. And sometimes even in the new series, which never gets away without doing an alien, of course. You dream of a historical episode these days. But I remember there's an episode. I mean, I really love the episode Vampires of Venice, but there's a bit in it where probably Amy says, "Oh, it's vampires," and the Doctor says, "Or something worse," and you're like, "Well, what's worse than that?" And he means aliens, and it's like, you see aliens every week. You're an alien. Like, I don't really see the big whoop. And in this, yeah, it does kind of intrude a bit. I've no idea why they made that choice. Maybe it was a pacing thing. They literally went, "Look, there's enough court intrigue here for 3 episodes tops. We need to pull this up, make this a bit longer." Maybe that was it. But yeah, it's like you say. I think when they can really just tell a story in history. I mean, it's I do grind this axe quite a lot. But when you look at the Hartnell stories, you think you've got a time machine, you've got an alien, and you've got the incongruity of them. You've got the fact that they're there at all. And I always think that's enough sci-fi. You've brought sci-fi with you. You can set this anywhere. It is automatically a science fiction story as much as you want. You can bang on about time being out of joint or something like that. I'm reading BBC books at the moment, Doctor Who 90s novels, and I just read one called Asylum, which is a historical set in the ooh, is it 14th century? Something like that. And it does have some alien stuff going on, but it kind of ignores it and it just sort of focuses on the history stuff instead. And I don't think it really loses very much from doing that. So yeah, I think it's one of those things that we definitely lost. I mean, God, we lost it as far back as the Highlanders was the last one. It has been a long time, but yeah, Big Finish is kind of the only route to get more of that. And yeah, it's a shame when they only want to stick a toe in the pool. That's enough.
See, I'm gonna have to be that guy now and go, "Well, actually, Black Orchid is a pure historical."
Oh yes, all right, yeah, there
But
you go.
apart from that,
And what a pure historical it is.
well, yes. I
Yeah,
suppose Black Orchid isn't. It's not particularly centered around a certain historical event or era, is it? It just happens to be there's no aliens and that kind of thing.
yeah. Well,
Um,
it's like an Agatha Christie, isn't it?
well, yeah, exactly. What they were going for. Um, have you listened to No Place Like Home, which is the sort of, I think it was free with Doctor Who magazine, and it was kind of a
Do you know?
mini sequel to this.
I don't think I have. I think it's been in my folder because I'm very good at downloading my purchases, but not so great at remembering to listen to them. So I'm gonna make a point of that. I've got it, but I haven't listened to it yet.
It's good. It's really not very long. It's only about 20 minutes or so, I think. Um, and it does have sort of the alien threat, but it's all done a bit comically. But the majority of it is sort of just like an extended Fifth Doctor showing Erimem around the TARDIS scene, and it's actually quite
Oh.
cute. It's obviously it's kind of a look at the kind of first day in the TARDIS orienteering thing the Doctor does with a new companion, and it's quite good. It's worth listening to. It
Mm.
doesn't change anything. It's completely missable, but it just is a nice little add on to this story, and it's definitely worth listening to immediately after this story. It's enjoyable. It's a lot of fun. I kind of like what they did with it. Like I say, there is a story there. It isn't just a plot around the TARDIS, but a big chunk of it is. Um, and I kind of wish we saw more of that. Um, yes, my big complaint about this one is not only is it not a pure historical, I actually forgot that it wasn't a pure historical before listening to it for what must have been at the very least the third time. Never mind, eh? Most importantly, I think, we now have a cat on the TARDIS.
I forgot about that.
For I think canonically or chronologically, I should say, this is the first time. But doesn't Benny bring a cat onto the TARDIS in the New Adventures?
Woolsey. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. He
Um,
doesn't do very much. It's one of those the writers occasionally remember, and then in "Oh no, it isn't," he turns into Nicholas Courtney. If you're listening to the audio, um,
yes.
and then he stays on the university in Della. So I don't think we see much of him after that.
I want to know what happened to Woolsey.
Well, I feel like he
Doesn't
probably lived a long time.
Yes, he gets his leg broken at one point. Like, doesn't a villain break his leg to lure Benny out or something like that? Might be in it's in one of the early books that tied into the Big Finish series. Is it the Something
Hmm.
Crystal or
Oh, the Squire's Crystal. I've
Squire's
heard the
Crystal?
audiobook of that one. It's
Maybe it's,
incredible,
it's
but
I've
don't
read
remember
it,
that.
but it's a long time since I did read it. I need to do those audiobooks. What a sidestep.
Mm.
Anyway, let's get back to our 275 journey and let's go to Colditz, which is a story that starts off looking like it's going to be a pure historical, and I'm seeing a pattern here. Anyway, give us your review.
Okay. There's a lot to like about this one. The setting is automatically compelling. Colditz has been explored in books, TV, and board games, and we all love The Great Escape. And the Seventh Doctor and Ace work very well, having such a pungent form of repression to kick off against as actual Nazis. Rising to meet the material, we get a very strong performance from Sophie Aldred. She ages up Ace as she faces a creepy Nazi, as well as some stubborn British officers. But as good as the story's wartime drama is, and it's compelling throughout, the best thing here is the stuff on the sidelines. Much like the fires of Pompeii, there is a time travel element, but Steve Lyons throws the emphasis the other way this time. The Doctor is facing a changed timeline and a gloomy future for Earth if he and Ace can't stop it. This is all embodied by Klein, played electrifyingly by Tracy Childs. She comes from a future where Germany won the war, and what's worse, she possesses the Doctor's TARDIS from that timeline. She has now become part of the paradox set in motion by the Doctor, aka the one in Nazi 1965. Working it all out can be taxing at points. There was an explanatory line from Sylvester that I literally had to listen to 3 times, but the concepts are fantastic. In a way, it shouldn't work as well as it does. It's one of those stories where we're told about the interesting things happening rather than actually seeing or, I guess, hearing them happen. But the ideas are so good and the script is so tight that the Doctor and Klein's back and forth about all this is just as fascinating as being there. Elsewhere, we have a thoroughly nasty performance from David Tennant. He's good. You should get him back. A spot on wartime officer played by Nicholas Young, and a bit of a sympathetic colour from Toby Longworth as a friendly German officer. The sound design is a bit clunky at times. The sirens sound like keyboard noises, but the story's overall atmosphere and urgency more than compensate. I'm glad they revisited these ideas in later releases, but Colditz would have stood out anyway. I do think it's an interesting one to follow, Eye of the Scorpion, like you were kidding about there with the the kind of tension between historical and sci-fi. But I think in this one, it really makes a virtue of that. Like history itself is important, and the sci-fi is important, and one of them really needs to win out. So just it's a total coincidence, I'm sure, but it does kind of play with those ideas, but in a more kind of assured way than the Eye of the Scorpion.
I absolutely love the line at the start of this one from Ace, which is something along the lines of, "Oh, well, there's absolutely no way this is one of your master plans, is it, Doctor?" And obviously it's paid off, like flipping heck, even when it's impossible for it to be one of your master plans, it is one of your master plans. And that kind of ties into that whole thing as well.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, Colditz is such a cool setting. Like, it's such a good idea. It's such an obvious place to send the Doctor. And I think the Seventh Doctor and Ace is probably the best Doctor Companion combination you can actually send there. Like, 90% of classic companions, you send them to Colditz, they just kind of keep their head down and say yes or right. Whereas Ace is going to do what Ace is going to do, which is basically shout at everything and naturally rebel against it. And it works. It's great. Um, David Tennant is fantastic. Like, it's got to be a standout performance in all of Big Finish, Kurtz has. It's such an excellent, horrible, sadistic character, and Tennant just throws himself at it. And his German accent's not bad. Like,
Mm.
none of the accents in this are bad. Got to talk about the sound design. Like, I think you were maybe a little bit forgiving in your review there, which I can understand why, because when the story's so good, actually, I, I can easily not look past, listen past sort of iffy sound design, but they were obviously trying really, 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 really hard to convince you that you were in a castle. And maybe it didn't quite sort of work in the way they wanted it to. It's a bit too cramped and echoey, and yeah, somebody's just having a damn good play around with Adobe Audition and not quite getting the result that they want, but going, yeah, that'll do. But it's not enough to ruin the story, not in the slightest. Um, this really feels like it's developing Ace's character, and we are indeed in this little sort of storyline that kind of never went anywhere, where she's not Ace anymore, she's McShane now, and she's growing up and all of this kind of thing, and it carries through to the Rapture, which we'll talk about in a future episode. I quite liked what they were doing with it. Like, they kind of recognized, okay, we need to develop Ace a bit here. We need to do something with her. Perhaps what they were doing with the whole McShane thing was a little bit misguided, and obviously they recognized that as they sort of massively U-turned on it when Hex came along, and instead of forcing Ace to grow up, instead they kind of let her grow up naturally by giving her her own companion in Hex. But again, we'll get there in the future. But this is very much, I'd say really, it's a storyline that's kind of carried through from dust breeding and moves on to the Rapture, but that's probably all you're going to find of it. And even though she runs around shouting, I'm McShane, call me McShane, don't call me Ace," this story doesn't stop. There's always something happening. There's always a new revelation. There's always a new threat. David Tennant's always up to something new and horrible. We don't actually get time to explore any of this Ace character development. And again, the Rapture stopped to do that later on, so we do get there, but the Rapture came out a year after this. Yeah, I just think that it does have its little flaws, but you can kind of ignore them because self-contained, it is such an excellent adventure. Klein's a fantastic character. So by the time I properly got into Big Finish and by the time I heard this, the first Klein trilogy, Thousand Tiny Wings and so on, had come out. So I was able to just sort of immediately jump on and pick up where Klein left off. But in the real world, wasn't it about 10 years before Klein returned?
It's a while. Yeah.
It was a long time. I think it was about 8, 9, 10 years. And I can't believe it took that long because she's such a good character with such an interesting story, and it was just screaming out for more. It really was. I'm genuinely amazed they didn't have a back next release kind of thing, which they have done with other characters.
Mm.
Um, they did it with Bev Tarrant. Why the hell didn't they do it with Klein? So yeah, it's good. It's great. It's one of the strongest we've discussed so far, and I'm a big fan of it.
I do like Klein, the way that she is. I don't want to say sympathetic. You understand, uh, kind of with your brain, if not with your heart, um, where she's coming from, because it is that history thing. And she's like, well, whether you like it or not, this version of history she's grown up in, it's there, it's fixed, it's real. So you can hate it all you want, but from her point of view, it's immutable.
Oh, she's
So
she's
it's
trying to save her world.
yeah,
That's
yeah. I
what
mean,
she's doing.
it's an interesting spin on because like Marvel movies, they really love having villains who've got a point, and that is very laudable up to a point. You don't want to do it too much or kind of have the same thing every time. But with Klein, it's this awkward tension, good awkward between like I can kind of see that she has justification, but like, yeah, but she's a Nazi, so she's not allowed, and quite right. So it's interesting because yeah, you're up against someone who's making arguments that, in a very different context, the Doctor might make similar arguments and did do. Fires of Pompeii is all about him grumbling about how you're not allowed to divert from the sort of sacred timeline. And in this, he's just like, "Oh, I don't care. I'm pretty confident I like this one better. So let's not have that." Even though we know that other timeline quite happily played out for decades, and no Time Lord gods or whatever turned up to go, "Oh, this is wrong." So yeah, it's a lovely thorny sort of pickle, which is why I think I like all of those conversations between the two of them. Where I think some people maybe find it a bit too talky, but I'm so interested in the kind of problem that I'm like, "No, yeah, keep talking. I'll quite happily have a conversational story." Yeah.
And I particularly like that the Eighth Doctor is in it by implication as well.
Hmm.
That's cleverly done. The fact that in the other timeline, the Doctor actually regenerates and um, it's definitely Paul McGann. He's described as Paul McGann, and I know later when they did Klein's story, they had Paul McGann play Johann Schmidt,
Mm.
aka Alternative Eighth Doctor. But yeah, I love the fact that he just sort of he kind of sacrifices himself to revert back to the the correct timeline. Yeah, it's a very clever story. It kind of takes the timey-wimey manipulation of the Seventh Doctor that he's so famous for and does something particularly bold and interesting with it, which it doesn't happen a lot. There's a lot of talk about how the Seventh Doctor is all mysterious and manipulative, but it's not all that often it actually happens to this extent. And that's quite great. And yeah, that line at the very start, it does pay off when you get, so it was one of your master plans after all, Professor. You just didn't know you'd made it. It's great stuff. Love it. Um, shall we shift forward?
Please.
So to Primeval, where we revisit Traken before it's destroyed and basically ignore the fact that it's going to get destroyed. Go ahead.
Sarkin is one of those places that's interesting to think about, but you wouldn't want to live there. Primeval dives into its history with Lance Parkin's characteristic level of thought and detail, and it offers some good material for Davison and Sutton. But I'm still not crazy about the place. Parkin makes clever use of Nissa's fainting fits in early season 19 by making them the work of Quandar, an ancient threat to Traken. The Doctor is desperate, so he takes her back to the planet's past, hoping to consult the experts. What he finds is a people entrenched in doctrine, more interested in maintaining the status quo than in helping anyone. Meanwhile, the followers of Quandar work in much the same way, believing different specifics but still putting their faith in a disembodied force. There are lots of parallels between the two societies, with the key points being that evil is relative. Primeval is quite an interesting story about the dangers of fundamentalism and the ultimate transparency of certain beliefs. Watch the consuls crumble and worship Quandar instead when the going gets tough. To be fair, though, the laughable knee jerk suspicion that Nissa is infected by evil is actually correct. All of this feels a touch more interesting academically than it does as drama, but fortunately, there are good dramatic moments too. The Doctor's general hell or high water attitude to saving Nissa is a fair precursor to the caves of Atrasani, and he has no mercy for Quandar in the end. Nissa demonstrates growth by challenging the consuls, as well as demonstrating awesomeness when she pulls a gun on someone and demands to know how the stun setting works, or she'll just shoot to kill. A marvellous logical loophole for a pacifist. And who could forget Stephen Greif? He of the mellifluous Blake Seven voice, here very aptly playing a villain who mostly trades on how he sounds. It's a rich performance, booming and scary without ever feeling like a caricature, even though Quandar sounds quite a lot like a very silly sci-fi villain name. I like Primeval, but feel slightly at a distance from it in the same way that I do with The Keeper of Traken, which in a way is even more authentic. I do think it's, on a general note, it's a good one for the Fifth Doctor because of that kind of duty of care he has for his companions. All the Doctors care about their companions, but I think the Fifth Doctor, he worries, I think, more than most of them. And the idea that he would just rip up the rules just to go back to Traken, no, it's totally wrong. He shouldn't have done it, from the rules point of view. But I like that. It's very Fifth Doctor that he would give that a try.
Yeah, I suppose there's the added sort of threat of this being post-Earth shock, isn't there? So from a Fifth Doctor sort of point of view where he's obviously not wanting to lose another companion, yeah, he'd do something a bit desperate and a bit out there and a bit rule breaky, as you say. It just doesn't address it that much. Like it really feels as though there's room for some really, really heavy Fifth Doctor and Nissa stuff here. Like, we can properly have a conversation about the destruction of Draken, we can properly have a conversation about Adric, and it's not there really at all. It's kind of glossed over. You're absolutely right about Quandar being a daft name. Like, it sounds like something out of Red Dwarf, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I can just sort of see like Rimmer rolling his R's over it as much as possible to take the mick. But yeah, it's a good enough story, and Stephen Greif is fantastic. I mean, we can sit here talking about how fantastic he is for hours. We've done the first series of Blake Seven on this very podcast, and he's such an obvious Doctor Who guest star that never happened. So I'm glad Big Finish corrected that, and he was in a few as well. Big Finish had him a few times in Doctor Who, which kind of feels like it's righted a wrong, fixed a bit of an injustice. But yeah, it's a real shame that he never turned up in Telly Doctor Who. I do like the idea of the Fifth Doctor being the first Keeper of Traken. Like that's quite cleverly done. It's maybe a little bit obvious. You can sort of see it coming, and it's just a cheeky thing that's thrown in there, obviously. And it's kind of interesting to see how Traken became the society that it is in The Keeper of Traken, and why that susceptibility to evil is there, because actually in Keeper of Traken it does come off a little bit silly at sometimes. The Keeper just goes, evil, evil, whenever the Master rocks up, whenever the Melker rocks up. So it kind of, he puts some kind of logic towards that, I guess. Fifth Doctor meeting Quandar's good. We get some good Doctor villain playing off each other, encounter acting from the pair of them. And it's, how I said Cold It's is kind of a story that worked best because it was the Seventh Doctor and Ace. I guess
Mm.
this is a story that works best because it's the Fifth Doctor and Nyssa, not just because of the Draken connection, but just in terms of the way the Fifth Doctor, encounters evil and tackles evil, and how he's kind of driven to have that bit of a ruthless side when he doesn't show any mercy towards the end. So yeah, it's good. It's a good story, and it's not the most obvious Doctor Who story to revisit the Keeper of Draken, because the story starts with a potted history of Draken. You know, the first episode works almost like a documentary. Here's the history of Draken. Um, and then we are witnessing Traken in his final days, and 3 episodes later in Legopolis, it's totally destroyed. So it is interesting to visit what is, in terms of what we've had in Doctor Who, it's kind of prehistorical Traken, isn't it? Um, and that's kind of interesting to see. I just, yeah, I'm with you. It falls a little bit flat. It's a little bit, again, it's one of those sort of comfortable stories that just gets on with it that I was referring to when we started. It happens. It's good that it happens. It's not a bad story. There's nothing offensive or actively bad here. Just of all the stories surrounding it, I think I'd probably choose one of the others to listen to, or at least one of the others is more likely to stand out while I'm making that decision. Um, and now I can't help but think about Quandar sounding like something out of Red Dwarf. I really can't.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's one reason to get the best voice actor you possibly can to kind of go, let's posh this up a bit, shall we? Not that he's posh, but it's just yeah, let's put a bit of
Let's give him a
class
bit of
on this.
credibility. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. You kind of go, all right, fine, he's called Quandar. I'm okay with it. I do quite like actually thinking about it now. This hadn't really occurred to me before, but there's something quite good about the Fifth Doctor going back to Traken because, in a very long-winded way, his genesis is kind of there because all of the Logopolis stuff kicks off because of it, well, meeting the Master there and the Master becoming tree mass and all of that. So I don't know. There's something nice in the fact that the Fifth Doctor and Nyssa have this loosely shared association with her home planet, which I don't know. Maybe that goes some way to explaining why the Fifth Doctor's so close to Nyssa. Although that is, generally speaking, more of a Big Finish thing. Although I know Peter Davison really enjoyed working with Sarah Sutton, but as a character, it comes across more in Big Finish. But yeah, he really loves Nyssa, and I've arbitrarily decided that's partly why, is because his death was somewhat foretold from Traken.
Yes, it's, you have to have Keeper of Traken to have Legopolis. There's no doubt about that.
Mm.
Which, well, it'd be very difficult for Big Finish to do a direct Legopolis sequel, because Legopolis just about wipes out every aspect that is introduced in the story of Legopolis. Like, the
Yeah.
planet goes, the Watcher becomes the Doctor dies himself. The only real hangover from Legopolis is the fact that Traken is destroyed, and that is addressed here. Um, well, it is addressed well. It, like I say,
Hmm.
it's not a bad story. It's entirely inoffensive. It just doesn't jump out at me like a lot of the other stories in this era of Big Finish. But that's fine. It's good to have just like a quiet one that happens, I guess. Which our next story is not a quiet story that just happens. Um, so go on then, this should be fun. The One Doctor, which I believe started a fairly short-lived tradition of like slightly daft Christmas specials for the monthly range. Am I right in
Hmm.
thinking that?
You
Um,
might be.
there
I'd
was,
have to look it up though.
well, there's this and there's Bang Bang Boom, if nothing else.
Hmm.
But I think the idea is they were sort of slightly more light-hearted around Christmas time releases. I don't know.
Hmm.
So this one is very, very silly. It's full of very, very silly references. And I mean, it's pantomime. It's Doctor Who does pantomime, isn't it? So go on then, give us your Doctor Who does pantomime review.
Well, on that note, It's pretty well documented that John Nathan Turner enjoyed panto. He spent a questionable amount of time and resources organising shows starring his Doctor Who cast. Unofficially, you can see panto influences creeping into the show itself, such as the original casting of Bonnie Langford, then known for her plucky stage talents. This sort of thing can't have helped certain uncharitable assessments of Doctor Who as a silly series full of wobbly sets and dustbin monsters. The One Doctor tackles this perception and the inherent cheapened cheerfulness in some corners of Doctor Who by providing the silliest story possible, as if to say, so there. It features a bona fide Panto Dane playing someone called Banto Zame, just in case you mistook Christopher Biggins for someone else. There's a jolly The Weakest Link knockoff 2 years before Russell T Davies did it. Matt Lucas plays a depressed jelly monster, and both Colin Baker and Bonnie Langford get thoroughly dressed down by their con artist equivalents Banto and Sally Ann. Not to be outdone, they both give sublime comic performances themselves. It's stuffed with recognisable Doctor Who nods, like the Delaware theme randomly appearing on episode 3, and it beats a lot of comedians to the punch by including a TARDIS shaped like a Portaloo. It is extraordinarily light and fluffy, but it's also one of those Big Finish stories that hits precisely the target it means to. It's one I revisit and giggle at. It does feel very Christmassy, even though I don't think there's anything literally Christmassy about it, but it gives that off, I think.
Yes, it's very much the Christmas panto, isn't it?
Hmm.
And we've got the right Doctor for it. We've got the right companion for it. We've got the right guest star for it. It all does it does all come together, and it achieves what it sets out to achieve, which is just do a very. I mean, I've recently listened to The Ultimate Adventure, the adaptation, the Big Finish
Oh,
adaptation, and
yeah.
you know what? They're pretty damn close. It has to be said, they are two stories that are fairly similar. Um, I absolutely love the use of the Delaware theme and the TARDIS as a Portaloo joke, and it's none of it's original. Like, none of these jokes were created exclusively for this audio. It's just picking up on stuff, isn't it? And that works. That's fine. It's all those sly nods and references to the people that will have been buying Big Finish in December 2001 when it was all a bit nichey and Doctor Who wasn't back yet or even thought about yet and all that kind of thing. Yeah, it's just a silly, fun little story. Um, it's a proper story though. It's still, take away all the daftness and all the panto. It is still a 4-part Doctor Who story that actually I can believe happening. I can believe the new series doing something like this. I mean, as you said, Bad Wolf did get Rose onto the weakest link. So yeah. Oh, I like the IKEA gag as well. They have to build. Do they have to put up shelves or something like that?
It's some sort of shelving unit, yeah. They have
Yeah,
to, or die. They have to put it together or die, and,
yeah. It's just
that's quite a good
cracking
cliffhanger.
stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And the
It's, I like
instructions don't make any sense, and they just keep being random parts. Yeah,
just like IKEA, yeah. Um, yeah, I think there's really something to the way it kind of takes the mick out of I wanna say obvious, but again, I'm not trying to take away from it, but it takes away from the stuff about Doctor Who that is perhaps easy to take the mick out of. But first of all, for Doctor Who to do that up front, it's an impulse that the new series had immediately with the kind of, farting aliens and the silly wheelie bins. Um, it's just kind of going, "Yes, we know people don't take it very seriously. We're gonna we're gonna meet you on that level, and then we're gonna do better." And in this one, it's only meeting you on that level, but it's so ruthless about it, and it kind of, really goes for the gag everywhere. Um, even the fact that there's this general sort of assumption that, you'll notice this whenever the sort of there's uncertainty about who's going to be Doctor Who, and the lazier answers tend to be light entertainment people, because at some point the idea kind of crystallized in like newspaper people's heads that when you want Doctor Who, you just get a comedian and that's it. That's not to say comedians can't be great actors, but that's not really the starting point for Doctor Who. But people look at it and they go, "Oh well, he's a wacky character, therefore, I don't know, get Richard Ayoade or something in there." And it's just like, look, it could be brilliant, but you're kind of barking up the wrong tree because you want an actor first, really. And this kind of goes anyway. Here's Christopher Bickens as a Panto Dame version of it. So it's kind of meeting that preconception head on. And you've got Sally Ann, who is sort of a stereotypical silly companion, really. Um, there's a bit of a rapport like Vorg and Schörner from Carnival of Monsters to the two of them. I guess literally because they're kind of con artists as well. Whoops, there we go. It's probably inspired by Carnival of Monsters, and I've never noticed that until now. Um, but yeah, I really like that about the humor. I think there is cleverness to it, even though TARDIS's toilet it feels like such an obvious joke, but the really good bit is the Doctor's disgust that someone would make that association is kind of it kind of puts all of those jokes into context of letting the Doctor roll his eyes at this stuff and go, just like, I can't believe this is what you think Doctor Who is. I mean, that's basically what he's saying when he's revolted by these associations, and he's like, if you can't see the difference between him and me, even though he's wearing basically a panto costume as standard. Um, yeah, I think it's a really interesting point in Doctor Who to do that, to kind of try to kind of get on your high horse. Again, it sounds like I'm picking on it, not, but like to pick on the Colin Baker and Nell era, which is the silliest I think the Doctor Who has ever seemed. Whether or not the stories are silly, I don't know. Terror of the Vervoids is pretty horrifying, actually. Um, Ends in a genocide. But yeah, I think that's quite clever, really, to use the silliest era to make the point that Doctor Who is not really as silly as you think, because it bombards you with all of these jokes, and then you come away from it going, "That's actually not very much like the rest of these stories we've been listening to." If you're listening to more than just the one Doctor, so yeah, I think it's a very interesting way to kind of put Doctor Who in context, whilst also just being, you know, a laugh. I mean, it is just the easiest listen for Big Finish. Really, it's just such a silly treat. Really, yeah. It's I definitely go back to it a lot. Just for a pick me up, really, just for a kind of silly story.
Yeah, it sets out to be silly. It does silly very well, and there are, like you say, bigger things going on. It is challenging perceptions of an era of Doctor Who, and as you quite rightly say, the only sort of true on-screen Sixth Doctor and Mel story we get is Terror of the Vervoids, and it's an absolute bloodbath. It's a grim story. Like, I like Vervoids; it's a good story. But it's it's not that silly pantomime that everyone seems to think season 23 is, or seasons 23 and 24, I should say.
Mm.
Um, but this is, yeah, I think you're right. This is kind of what a an uneducated perception of that era is. And if you do think late 80s Doctor Who is a silly pantomime, you should go and watch some and get proved wrong.
Yeah,
Um,
Michael Grade.
yeah, yeah,
That'll show him.
yeah, that'll show you. Okay, well, yeah, 4 good stories. Like I say, the range is a little bit comfortable now. It can do just another story, which I think it does with Eye of the Scorpion and not Cold Hits, Eye of the Scorpion and
Primeval.
thank you, Primeval. But it is also doing something quite bold, Cold Hits, and just something silly and fun, as it has with the One Doctor. So yeah, it's been a good little bag of stories, and Normally we do 5 in these 275 episodes. We've only done 4 here because we want to do the big Meghan series altogether, which we'll do in a few weeks' time. But this has been a nice little palate cleanser before we do get to the sort of very heavy Web of Time storyline, Eighth Doctor and Charlie series 2. And it's been a good little run. I'm glad we've broken it up this way. So yes, we will be back with more 275 Toon, but that is... I'll do that again. We will be back with more 275 soon, but that is all we have time for now. So, like I say, we'll be back and we will do McGann, and I'm looking forward to doing the McGann. I'm looking forward to just listening to 6 McGann stories on the bounce that make up an absolutely bloody good series. But we will leave it there, so I will say thank you and goodbye to you, Gareth.
Thanks again.
And we'll be back for more spodcasting very soon. Goodbye now.